back. But what does the bill not do? It does not override neutral zoning, health, or safety regulations. There's no direct crypto holding by the state, no mandates to use or accept crypto. All participation continues to remain voluntary. No change to tax, consumer protection, or anti-fraud laws. No favoritism towards no favoritism towards any technology or company, and then no expansion of state control over digital wallets. Why this matters? Allows for investor choice. Allows for Indiana to be have a welcoming innovation climate, regulatory clarity, and an economic competitiveness with our Midwest states and those states across the country. I hope over the next month I can work with those who have questions, concerns, thoughts, or additional items that they would like to see in this bill. And in closing, House Bill 1042 is pro-innovation and pro-transparency. It modernizes Indiana's code to recognize digital assets without risk to taxpayers. And with that, I'm glad to take questions.
Thank you, Representative Pierce. Just a quick reminder to the audience, if you have not signed up yet to testify and you'd like to testify, you can do so online, or I think we've got some of these paper sheets hanging around here. So with that, Representative Judy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just wanted to kind of make a comment and get your feedback, but I saw yesterday where Vanguard, I think it's the second largest asset management firm worldwide, is actually now going to offer ETFs on particular crypto technologies going forward. So this is emerging across the financial sector, and we're not in a vacuum. We're kind of only stay doing this. This is where the industry is kind of moving towards, correct?
Very much so. And beyond Vanguard, I know JP Morgan Chase originally had a kind of a negative position on cryptocurrency. They've now kind of come around on that issue. So we're going to continue to see the states and hopefully the federal government. There's continuing talks on the federal side. There might be another cryptocurrency bill coming. We shall see. But definitely this will be, I think crypto policy will be probably a mainstay of this committee's work for probably years to come.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the committee? I've got one. Representative Pierce, the bill specifically calls out ETFs, exchange traded funds. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, so I'm not an investment professional, so I will speak very broadly. But those are, you're not having someone that decides to have their state investment. They're not buying one part of one Bitcoin and things like that. They're investing in an array of cryptocurrencies, and they're usually controlled where they're buying portions. And so it would be the equivalent of when we're having other ETFs or other investment choices, similar to, I make individual investment choices with our state retirement fund. There's some high risk options. There's some really low risk options, right? And so this is one of those options where you could choose theoretically to say, hey, I want to invest in an array of cryptocurrencies as one of my, maybe 5%, 10%, whatever it may be that you decide to invest in.
And just, I think, as we know, last year we had a conversation about adding options around cryptocurrency to our investment portfolio for state employees. There's some concerns about volatility. Can you speak to that at all?
Yeah, I think there's kind of on each different investment pool that we're talking about in this bill. Some of it's where you have IMPERS or other agencies who are having investment professionals deciding, okay, if you have an individual that's retiring in 2 or 3 years, I probably don't see cryptocurrency as part of their investment strategy. But if you have an individual who, our legislative assistants, for example, who are in their early 20s, who those investment professionals might decide to put in a small portion of their investments into that to see a potential high return. Same thing with, international large cap, trade stocks in a similar manner. And then, so it's going to depend on, the age of the individual investing, those who, what kind of risk they want to, expose themselves to, and individuals will make those decisions on their end. And then in terms of the kind of more, block investments, that's where you'll have those investors kind of make the decisions based off different levels of risk and how far away that individuals are from retiring. And it really kind of depends almost based off different groups of ages you're looking at.
Great. Any other questions for Representative Pierce? Surprisingly, none for now.
Yeah.
So we'll reserve some for later, maybe. We'll start public testimony. I've got Tony Green from InPers.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Tony Green, Deputy Director, Indiana Public Retirement System. InPers is neutral on the bill. I just want to add a couple points. Concerns about the volatility for defined contribution plans. When members get to choose how to invest their money, we would want to make sure there's proper disclaimers and notices about the volatility. Now, the consultants that we have in the industry, they're always concerned about making sure you offer enough choices to members, but not offering too many choices to members. So periodically we do surveys to see what our members kind of want, what the interest is, and we've asked our members up to this point if they're interested in crypto, and so far the feedback's been no. Very, very minimal. It's not to say if you offer it, then people will invest, but we've asked for periodic feedback on that. As far as our capability, if it's the will of the legislature to move forward and offer a crypto as an investment choice to our members, we'd ask that we'd be allowed to work with LSA. We don't have the flexibility that the deferred compensation plan has. You'll hear from them in a moment, but we don't have any self-directed accounts. And we don't allow ETFs right now. So there'd have to be some changes in our statute allowing us to offer some type of self-directed brokerage account that would allow for ETF cryptocurrency or crypto. So with that, I'll take any questions you guys have.
Any questions from the committee for Mr. Green? So on your, this is a good point to make, a good point of clarity, I think. So the accounts that you manage at InPers, you're saying, I think what I'm hearing is that you currently are not able to, if you're an investor trying to choose where you want to go, you're not able to A, choose ETFs, but B, really self-direct very much, right? So you choose like a target date fund and set it and forget it kind of thing.
Yeah, it's much more bigger, broader, growth stocks or, international stock funds, that type of stuff, but nothing specifically that allows intraday trading, that type of brokerage account. So,
Representative Pierce.
Thank you. First off, I look forward to following up with you
Yep.
After this hearing and talking more. In terms of the notice portion of it, would you need additional language in this bill, or would it?
No,
Okay.
it would just be precautions we take on
Gotcha.
our end.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Representative Dan Chesser.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I think Rep. Pierce just asked this somewhat question, but that was on the proper disclaimers that you referenced.
Yes.
How does that differ? How would it differ from what you currently provide as
We
disclaimers
would just
today?
have to increase the language because the volatility for crypto is much more. There's much more volatility than the normal, the ups and downs. So we would just make sure our members have access to that information to make sure they understand the volatilities there before they actually make their choice. So,
Any other questions for Mr. Green? Seeing none, thank you.
Yep.
Next up, we'll have Stacy Schneider from the Indiana Comptroller's Office.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Thank you for having me. Stacy Schneider, I'm the Deputy Comptroller for the Comptroller's Office. We also serve as the administrator for the Hoosier Start DC plan. Agree with everything that Tony Green has just mentioned on the DC side. We do actually have a self-directed brokerage that people can sign up for. And that is something that they can have exposure to cryptocurrency if they'd like. We did that a couple of years ago and got that in the menu. I will tell you, one of the reasons this bill is a bit challenging for us is that ETFs are difficult as a direct investment option because most of our record keeper platforms, I don't know of any that actually offer an ETF directly on their platform. So there would be that hurdle to overcome. The comptroller is very much a partner with you in these emerging markets. The Deferred Compensation Committee does an annual review and regularly then again throughout the year on emerging technologies. We have an investment consultant who keeps us apprised of those things. one of the concerns we have besides the volatility is the regulatory framework and that participants may not fully understand the investment at this time. So in our self-directed brokerage, we have 14 participants out of 70,000 who actually opt into that. And we do have those special disclosures there. And so that's how they can get into looking at what other kinds of options that they want to do in an ETF or a cryptocurrency. Any other questions?
Representative Judy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your testimony. Do you limit exposure to the crypto investments within that plan?
You know, that's a good question. I will have to get back to you on that. It's through our Schwab account, so I'll get the answer for you.
Thanks.
I've got just a quick clarifying question. So you offer, and this just for my understanding, so you offer kind of two different paths here, right? So you've got the traditional DC path, and then you're, if I'm understanding correctly, you've got, if I'm a state employee, I can opt to have is it a Schwab?
A Schwab self-directed account.
A Schwab
Correct.
self-directed account. Okay. And you all don't manage that, essentially. It's the
Right. As a matter of fact, so it is one option. Again, we have mutual funds, collective investment trusts, target date funds. You default into a target date fund when you're auto enrolled, unless you decide to make a different allocation throughout. And then you have the Schwab account. If you decide to choose the Schwab account, there's a separate fee and that's disclosed. And then that takes you over to the Schwab platform. And you're only allowed to take a certain percentage of your Hoosier Start dollars to be able to go into that account. But it is an option that you can choose.
Okay. So again, so you've got in the traditional path on the Hoosier Start, the platform is Nationwide, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then the other side, it's Schwab. And so Nationwide currently doesn't have the capability to do the ETF type thing. Is that
Correct.
how I'm understanding it?
That's
Okay.
right. Yeah.
Okay.
Because of its daily trading, the
Intraday
daily
yeah,
trading.
yeah.
Right now, all the mutual funds are traded once a day. It's a point in time, whereas the ETFs are continuously real-time pricing.
Right. Okay. Any other questions for Ms. Snyder? Seeing none, thank you for coming to testify.
Thank you.
Next up, we've got Abby Reddy from the Treasurer of State's office.
Good afternoon. Thank you. Or morning, Mr. Chairman.
You're getting way ahead of yourself.
I know. Thank you. The treasurer and our team, we broadly are supportive of this bill, the outlines of it. Interestingly enough, this afternoon, he will be part of a task force that is kind of helping to advise on the Genius Act that Representative Pierce just mentioned. Obviously, we've worked with, we've talked to Representative Judy and Pierce and yourself on some of the bigger questions that surround these issues. There are certain, I think, cleanup and things that we would like to see maybe worked on. And I know we've spoken with Representative Pierce on that, but we think this bill is a good starting point. And I think broadly we're okay with it so far. So, and we'll look forward to working with you guys to get going to maybe a spot that would be in a better spot. So we're good with that.
Are there any questions for Ms. Reddy? All right, seeing none, we will move on to Dax Denton from the Indiana Bankers Association.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Dax Denton with the Indiana Bankers Association. I signed up as neutral. If there was an option to be neutral with concerns, I would have selected that option. But alas, I felt like neutral was probably the best spot based off of the content of the legislation. I'll kind of walk you through some of our concerns here in just a moment, but appreciate the opportunity to have this discussion today and conversation on the bill. I appreciate Representative Pierce, your focus on some of these issues here in the legislation. I'll first start by saying, also want to appreciate or extend our appreciation for the consideration for moving the Trust Indiana local government investment pool language in there. I think one of the things that the association historically has always been concerned about is investing public funds in risky investments or more risky investments than are currently permitted. Obviously, this doesn't do that. This is more on the pension side, and this is more self-directed in many respects. And so that's a bright line for for kind of where we stand on policy. And I know Representative Pierce indicated in his opening remarks that this doesn't touch that. And we certainly agree based off of the removal of that Trust Indiana. So I would flag that piece with significant concern for us if it's not removed. But obviously, I know it sounds like that's going to be something in the process of being worked on moving forward. I also just want to say, there's a lot happening federally. So we have to be thinking about, as a state, how this interplays with both the Genius Act, which passed back in March, and then there is the Clarity Act, which is not passed. I don't ever want to handicap something in Congress passing or not passing, but the Clarity Act sets up a market structure for exactly what we're talking about today. It's on the Senate side. It passed with pretty significant bipartisan support on the House side. It's a different version on the Senate side, but it does look like there's some momentum there that Congress will act on the Clarity Act or some version of that here, at least in the coming months, if not 6 months or so. So again, just want to highlight that as that will potentially interplay with whatever Indiana decides to do with this legislation and with legislation going forward. I just want to kind of keep my comments on the concern part brief. No concern on the self-directed or pension investment structure from the banking point of view. There are some concerns that we have related to the limitations on governmental agencies regulating or limiting their ability to regulate these products. I wouldn't say that we feel like the state regulators should be regulating these products, but to handcuff them out of the gate, I think is notable. And I'm thinking not local government. I'm thinking our state regulator, the DFI. And I don't necessarily think that this is the intent of the bill, but limiting my term, kind of the use or exchange of these assets, uses the term digital asset in the second section of the bill, which includes crypto and stablecoin. And as we all know, stablecoin is totally different than crypto in many respects. And my concern about limiting the DFI's ability to regulate the digital asset term, that may interfere with the state's interest in looking at stablecoins. Genius Act, as we all know, created a pathway for states to get into the approach of regulating and licensing stablecoin issuers. And I worry that this bill may indirectly back our way into limiting the state's ability to even do that if we decide to do that. And so I think that's something that certainly needs to be cleaned up if that provision in the legislation moves forward. I'll defer to the state regulators on kind of their interest in the overall regulation, but just want to flag that from a broad standpoint, limiting our state regulators' ability to manage kind of their regulatory oversight of these products moving forward. Beyond that, we just appreciate the opportunity to work with the chair, the committee, and Representative Pierce on any other issues that arise. As it was already commented, there's a lot in this bill. We're still coming through it, to be candid with you. The final thing I'll say is some of the definitions, I think, we're still looking at the definitions. There may need to be, from our point of view, some clarification on the definitions. ETF, I think, was mentioned earlier. No concern about necessarily the definition of ETF. It doesn't look like it's really defined in the bill. So that might be something that, moving forward in January, the committee's willing to look at as far as cleaning that up and making sure that reads a little bit cleaner. And I know this is certainly a work in progress and appreciate the ongoing conversation and the opportunity to have this month-long conversation going into January. So.
Thank you, Mr. Denton. Any questions? Representative Pierce.
More of a statement. First off, thank you. And I look forward to working with you over the next month and others. I do want to point out, I do think you're probably pretty correct with the stablecoin language. We're working on a separate bill that will probably be filed later this month on stablecoins. I wouldn't be shocked if we remove those out, but I just want to point that out for if folks are testifying afterwards and discussing the stablecoin. In terms of the local unit regulation, I know it's still early, but could you kind of walk me through a scenario that concerns you, at least just broadly?
And we're not really concerned about the local unit. It's more about the public agency being the DFI, our state regulator.
Gotcha. Okay. Gotcha.
Thank you, Representative Pierce. Yeah, I thought it was interesting, Mr. Denton, that you said everybody knows the difference between stablecoin and crypto, and I don't know that that's necessarily true.
Apologize, Mr. Chairman.
I think I'm still trying to figure this whole thing out. But every time I think I understand it, I read something else. I'm like, oh gosh. But as was noted here, I think it's something that we have to address as a legislature, right? This is this whole digital asset piece, and we started several years ago. I know. Senator Garton sent a bill over on electronic or controllable electronic records, which I know is mentioned in the bill, and so we're kind of taking bites at a time at this. So, thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Denton? Seeing none, thank you. I actually don't have anybody else signed up to testify. So, if you're here and you want to testify, okay, you can step up to the mic and give your name and who you're with. And
good morning. I do have some handouts, so I'm going to give these out. I'm happy to pass them down if they don't mind. All right. If you don't mind taking one and passing it down, please. Thank you. It's a different one. Just a different one. Thanks. All right. Chair, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify this morning. My name is Rick Tapia. I'm an attorney and native Hoosier with more than 10 years of experience in digital assets and financial technology. My work has spanned early stage innovators, established financial institutions, and direct engagement with federal and state regulators on how this technology should be governed. Yet, despite that national and global scope, Indiana has always been home. I first spent time in this building as a humble intern, and even as my career grew outward, my roots remained here. I've now come full circle, and I've been given an opportunity to bring that experience back to Hoosier businesses and policymakers as Indiana considers how to approach this rapidly developing field. I'm here today in support of House Bill 1042 because it is a careful and forward-looking bill that protects Hoosiers while helping Indiana compete for next-generation jobs and investment. So let me begin by briefly describing what the bill actually does. First, House Bill 1042 authorizes, as we've already discussed briefly, only cryptocurrency traded funds, not direct coins, inside certain state retirement and defined programs. These are regulated SEC-registered products already used by pension systems in other states. This is optional exposure through regulated ETFs inside familiar fiduciary structures. Second, the bill protects the lawful use of digital assets for Hoosier individuals and businesses. As it's currently drafted, a public agency may not prohibit someone from accepting digital assets as payment or from controlling their own assets using a self-hosted or hardware wallet. This bill also protects operating a blockchain node, developing non-custodial software, transferring digital assets, and participating in staking. These are basic, everyday uses that should be singled out for special penalties. Third, the bill provides essential legal clarity by stating that non-custodial software, programs where a developer never takes possession of a customer's assets, is not considered money transmission. This aligns Indiana with the Uniform Commercial Code and with similar clarifications made in a number of other states. Clear definitions reduce litigation risk and make it easier for honest businesses to succeed in our state. Fourth, House Bill 1042 adopts a neutral, non-discriminatory approach to mining and computing activity. As some others will come up here and speak more about, in industrial zones, a mining business must follow the same noise, use, and safety standards as any other industrial operation. In residential areas, home hobby mining is permitted, but no one can operate a mining business from a residence. Local governments retain full authority to enforce neutral health, safety, environmental, and noise codes. What they cannot do in the bill is impose crypto-specific burdens unrelated to the underlying activity. So stepping back for a moment, here's why House Bill 1042 matters. Digital asset activity is already occurring in Indiana and has been for some time. Our constituents hold crypto and retirements accounts, use stablecoins for payments, and interact with blockchain applications built into mainstream financial platforms that we use every day. Mining companies are established and seek regulatory certainty for their businesses as well. To this point, companies in our neighboring states, including Ohio, Kentucky, Illinois, and Michigan, are operating under clearer frameworks than we currently have. If Indiana wants to attract and retain compliance-minded businesses, data infrastructure, and high-skilled software and technology jobs, we need rules that are clear and neutral. House Bill 1042 accomplishes that without expanding risks to the state. With that said, let me just address a few common concerns that I'm sure are in the room. Some worry about volatility, as already been discussed. Again, as the bill is currently drafted, it does not authorize direct coin holdings. It only allows ETF exposure through existing fiduciary standards and in defined contribution accounts. It is an optional menu item, nothing more. Some worry about scams. House Bill 1042 does not weaken anti-fraud authority. Rather, it strengthens enforcement by distinguishing non-custodial software from regulated custodial services. Prosecutors and regulators benefit from clear statutory lines. Some worry about energy use. This bill does not override general zoning, noise, and environmental rules. Industrial operations remain subject to industrial standards, and residential activity remains subject to residential standards. Nothing prevents the legislator, if it so chooses, from considering large load reporting or ratepayer protection measures in a future refinement. House Bill 1042 preserves local authority for neutral regulation. Some may ask why now? Because the states around us are already moving. The question is whether Indiana writes its own rules with prudence or waits for rules written elsewhere. House Bill 1042 does not take risks. Rather, it sets boundaries, protects Hoosiers, modernizes our statutes, and creates a structured process to evaluate government pilots before expansion. In closing, House Bill 1042 is not about betting on crypto. It is about writing clear, neutral rules that protect Hoosiers, reduce confusion, and give Indiana a competitive, responsible footing in an emerging area of technology and commerce. It invites innovation, upholds strong consumer protections, and allow our pension and savings programs to take advantage of regulated ETF offerings in a careful, fiduciary manner. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Tapia. Any questions? Representative Pierce.
Thank you, Rick, for your testimony. Can you kind of walk us through kind of one or two, we talk about, you have a handout here that kind of talks about some other states. Can you kind of highlight, maybe just for sake of time, maybe one state that's done good policy and an example, and kind of not necessarily trying to pick on people, but is there, maybe one bad policy as we kind of look down this road?
Yeah, I mean, I think if we want to kind of stay here in the Midwest in our own backyard, I think you could look at the state of Ohio as a state that has really developed, I think, a very thoughtful framework that has a lot of the protections, but also doesn't stifle a lot of the innovation that we kind of see in some other states. I think if you look to, again, staying here in the Midwest, the state of Illinois is probably on the other opposite side of that spectrum. And has been very restrictive, especially when it comes to regulating crypto-related businesses within that state. So yeah, I think those are kind of the two polar sides of the spectrum.
Representative Judy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think there's a lot of words here that many folks don't understand.
Sure.
So could you walk me through a little bit of this, operating a node, for example? We're gonna protect that because that's key to the infrastructure. Could you explain that a little bit?
Yeah. So when you think about operating a node, so in some blockchain networks, there's something called a node, and what this allows for is to essentially act as what I kind of call it is like a pillar for the network to continue to operate. And so in operating these nodes, sometimes you do have the creation of new digital assets on that particular chain that are created. And so that does kind of open up a different, set of questions. But I think one of the ones that we definitely want to make sure is saying, hey, as a baseline, whether you're an individual or a business, you're able to operate this without fear of reprieve from, your state agency or your state government.
Representative Judy.
And, for example, if I go into, I want to kind of clarify an ETF. So if I go into Coinbase, I can buy the actual individual crypto technology and put that in my wallet, or a wallet that's off it's not sanctioned to the actual Coinbase wallet itself. It's a standalone cold storage wallet. But an ETF is different than that. Can you explain the ETF and what this bill would actually be investing in?
Yeah, so as this kind of an antithetical example, so Michigan actually does have in their legislation direct coin holdings, which it does open up, I think, a level of risk that maybe certain states and other demographics are not necessarily open to. So with ETFs, on the other hand, you're operating inside an SEC regulated fiduciary structure that does have certain risks, tolerances, disclosures, and other things that I think are a lot more palatable and a little bit easier to understand. And definitely from a risk tolerance perspective, are certainly on the lower end of that spectrum.
Any follow-ups? I've got, so Mr. Tapia, just, I guess, talk briefly. Last year, we had a similar bill in terms of allowing defined contribution plans to invest in these products. In that bill, we called out, we essentially set a market cap standard for which coins would be allowed to be traded or ETFs. And I think it's just important to note as we talk about this, that we're talking about ETFs, right? And so do you happen to know how many coins have been approved for ETF?
It's been a handful. I mean, there's obviously Bitcoin, Ethereum. There's, I think there's been an XRP one. There's going to be a couple of more coming online. So there's a handful of them. Yeah.
And who makes that approval?
So it goes through the government agencies, and the SEC has to give the stamp of approval for this as well.
Right. Okay. So I just wanted to note that this is not we're not talking about Dogecoin or anything else at this point, right? It would have to make its way through all of the federal government channels to be approved and be listed as available for ETF.
That is correct.
Yeah. Any other questions for Mr. Tapia? Seeing none, thank you. Thanks for coming to testify.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else here? Yep.
Got some handouts as well. While the handouts are making their rounds, I want to thank. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me? Okay. Wanted to thank Mr. Chairman and the rest of the committee for taking time to meet with me today. My name is Ilya Rector, and I operate a local company called Megawatt, where we build and operate Bitcoin mining facilities across Madison, Vermilion, and Kosciuszko counties today. So Bitcoin has a lot of different opinions that come with it. I'm sure each of you have read press clippings and have formed your own opinion to some degree. So my hope today is to actually help demystify the topic, put a face behind the industry, and show that there's everyday Hoosiers working in the space and actually building the physical brick and mortar infrastructure beyond just the digital coins that we oftentimes talk about and hear about. So my background is I've lived in Indiana for over 20 years. Went to high school here, went to college at IU. We've got a big game this weekend, so excited about that. While in college, I started a company and built it over the course of 10 years that I ended up selling to Ford. After selling that company, my wife and I had a discussion, and we decided to stay in the state to actually build a life here, raise our family here, and stay here long term. And as an entrepreneur, I started thinking of what industries exist that I could actually build my next company here, where Indiana has a competitive advantage over states like California, over states like New York State, and states like that. Bitcoin mining offered me that opportunity to build it here. And in 2020, as a result, I built Megawatt here. And we've been growing ever since to the 3 locations that I mentioned, not to mention other companies that do similar things in the state. Now, the bill we're discussing today, it provides clear framework and guidelines for companies like mine to continue to invest and grow in the state with confidence. It's not asking for tax breaks or incentives, just a clear set of rules so that we know when we invest 7, 8, 9 figures into a facility that the zoning laws aren't going to be changed from under us 6 months, 1 year, 2 years down the line. Now, enough about me. We'll get into 2 topics that I don't think we've actually talked about yet today, but I'll cover since they're part of the bill, which are energy consumption and the economic impact that this industry has on states like Indiana.
Now, on the energy side of things, we have a problem as a state. Energy consumption is booming, and we have congestion on the grid. Now, the consumption is booming largely because of the data center expansion that I'm sure you're all familiar with. And there's an important distinction to be made between how AI data centers operate and how Bitcoin mining facilities operate. Where AI data centers, they operate in what I call a steady state, meaning that they're able to turn off, but if left to their own devices, they prefer to have 99.999% uptime. They're largely price insensitive, not really dependent on inclement weather or anything like that. They prefer to just stay online, operating almost like a factory that operates 24/7. Unlike those data centers, Bitcoin mining operates more like a flexible load on the grid, meaning that when energy is abundant and inexpensive, we're able to ramp up and absorb that energy and pay for it, helping the utilities. And when energy prices spike, or there's congestion on the grid, or there's inclement weather, which we've experienced over the last week, we are the first responders to immediately take those price signals in and shed that load and then turn back on to consume it when prices stabilize, thereby shielding residential customers from those price spikes. And the last week has actually provided a good opportunity to actually give you some evidence to support that claim I just made, which if you look at the handout that I just gave you, there's a chart at the bottom of it. And that chart is from one of our actual facilities operating today in Pearson, Indiana, in Kosciuszko County. So if you look at the chart, you'll notice that as prices start creeping up, which is the orange line there, we immediately respond to those and we shed all of our load, turn off the facility and go to near zero energy consumption, right? We're keeping some light bulbs on so that you can actually see what we're doing. We're not actually operating as a business. Then when prices stabilize, we ramp right back up and rinse and repeat as there's more inclement weather that rolls in. The key distinction here is that when temperatures dropped and people wanted to turn on their heaters simultaneously, we as a company didn't compete with them. If anything, we responded to those price signals, we shut off and released that energy so that people could heat their homes with confidence and that there wouldn't be congestion on the grid to where they didn't have to bear the burden of any of those price spikes, meaning we balanced the grid and helped shed some of that load. Now, I'm proud of the work that my company, Megawatt, has done in this, but admittedly, we're a relatively small company in an otherwise growing and booming industry. And that industry, and I can share if you're interested later, there's a peer-reviewed study by the Perryman Group that talks about the economic impact that the industry has had just over the last year. And across the country, over 30,000 jobs have been created by this industry to the tune of $4 billion of taxable revenue that was generated just last year. And 70% of that is happening just in 12 states across the country. And unfortunately, Indiana, as much as my company's here and several others are here, we're not a part of those 12 states. And that's part of my goal with this bill is to take a first step to set a clear framework so the companies beyond mine, if anything, it creates more competition for companies like mine who are already here to come to our state, invest in confidence, and continue to grow in this space. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you very much.
I'm excellent. Thank you. Any questions from the committee? Yes, Representative Slager.
Thank you for your testimony. Just a curious question. At the beginning, you made reference that Indiana was a more receptive state for this than some others. Could you describe how that is?
So there's policy, which we don't have much of yet. And then there's the natural advantages that certain states have over others, right? Where if you think about the price of energy and what makes it go up, what makes it go down. If you have a city, say San Francisco, Los Angeles, New York, or downtown Indianapolis, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to pay way more for energy to keep the lights on than a company putting computers in a facility, right? So in that sense, we need available energy, and we go to rural areas in particular to do that. Where I consider our business, it might not seem like it, but we talk about Main Street investment in Indiana a lot recently. Whether it seems like it or not, this is a Main Street business where the facilities that we build, they're not in downtown Indianapolis. They're in rural areas. They're on retired military bases. They're in industrial parks with abandoned warehouses. And we're creating these high-tech, high-paying jobs in those communities that otherwise don't have them. So Indiana has a competitive advantage because 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, we built electrical infrastructure in these areas that oftentimes don't have fiber internet. So AI data centers won't go there, but we will, and we can operate just fine. Whereas if you go to New York City, if you go to Los Angeles, the price of energy is going to be very cost prohibitive to do that. Not to mention the land is much more expensive.
We've got Representative Pierce, and then we'll move to Representative Judy.
Can you mentioned a location in Madison County? Can you kind of walk through that site location you have? Was that a industrial site that you built, or was there someone prior to you? And how long, if there was someone prior to you, how long was it there for before you came?
I appreciate the question, Representative Pierce. So there was a facility, Johns Mansfield facility, that was operated by Red Gold for a number of years before we got there. In 1994, I'm happy to share a newspaper article showing this, that facility burned down and had been sitting vacant since that time. We came in, and what otherwise doesn't look like the prettiest site, all we saw was heavy industrially zoned land, which is important for us because we want to be good stewards and we want to follow the rules. And it had nearby power lines that used to operate that facility that were untouched by the fire. So we were able to go in there and rebuild, not to make it sound too cliche, but very much a phoenix rising from the ashes of something that was sitting there completely vacant for 10, 20, 30 years, and rebuild and repurpose that site.
So just to be clear, so this is a situation where the area has to be zone industrial, which is obviously kind of a really high standard in terms of operation, correct?
Correct. And I'll take it one step further. We look for heavy industrial zoning.
Thank you.
Representative Judy.
Are you paying property tax as well and contributing to the tax base within those communities?
We are.
All right, thanks.
Representative Dan Chester.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and appreciate the testimony. A little bit more on the Madison County facility. Tell me the size of it. That's not my district at all. So size of it, how much of an investment you all made, what type of jobs, wages, those economic impacts are really starting to become important in this economic siting process.
Absolutely. I appreciate the question. The size, our footprint is very small, meaning that we can consume as much electricity as a Walmart in a facility about the size of this room, right? So it's very dense in the sense that we go wherever the land is available, where it's zoned properly, and the energy is available. And the energy is the main component of that. Beyond that, the jobs that we create, number one, you don't need a college education to work at our company. That's not a requirement. Oftentimes, if you can install a car stereo, we can repurpose you to fix some computers as well. So we take any and all. Minimum salary, we're talking $70,000 and above. Many of our salaries are in the six-figure amount. Sorry about that. Seven figures, I believe, mid seven figures went into that site. Some of our sites are eight figures.
Are you hiring? Sorry. Representative Lauer has a question.
We are. We have several plots of land under contract that we plan to break ground on early next year.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Really a two-part question. Besides site location, you said industrial is heavy industrial. What considerations do you have on, how near you are to internet, large internet pipe? Is that a big requirement? And also, are you at the scale where you have significant backup generators?
Great questions. And if anything, these are key differentiators in our industry relative to AI and HPC industries. Number one, we can operate our entire facility off of a cell phone connection. Now, we want to have redundancy, so oftentimes we'll put a Starlink on top, or we'll have fiber internet if it's available, but none of those are required.
Okay.
Genuinely, we can operate off of a cell phone. Another important point is we don't consume water, so it's all air cooled. And the facilities that are now coming online that are called hydro facilities, so it implies that they use water. They don't actually use any local water. It's a self-contained loop. So I know that that's been a discussion with AI as well.
And backup generators?
Zero.
Oh.
So that's deliberate on our part, where instead of asking for backup generation, we can go offline, right? My joke, but it's true, where take a Netflix data center or a Google data center. If those go offline and you can't access Netflix and there's a snowstorm, people aren't happy. If we go offline, there's revenue loss, so opportunity cost. But those batteries and backup generators, they cost more than for us to have 2% downtime throughout a course of a month. So when there's not power available or power is too expensive, we shut off happily.
Oh, thank you.
Any other questions? I just want to, as a point of clarification, as far as when we're talking about your facilities in the bill, and the protections, I think, for minors, miners, like, anyway, that what we're talking about here is not some sort of special exemptions that we're asking for. We're asking for local governments to give special deference or anything like that. What the bill is essentially asking is, if you're locating in a heavy industrial zoned area, that they not put additional burdens on businesses like yours. Is that correct?
You hit the nail on the head. So if you own a piece of land and you're okay with building a steel mill, an automotive plant, or any number of other heavy industrial factories, industries, things like that, we ask to be treated the same. We're not asking for any special treatment, just the same treatment.
Great. Well, thank you. Appreciate you coming to testify today.
Thank you very much.
Do we have anyone else? Mr. Burdick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Brian Burdick. I'm a lawyer with Barnes & Thornburg here in Indianapolis. And just a quick point of clarification, representing the Indiana County Treasurers Association here. I also represent the 529 plan and Hoosier Start, and those concerns were mentioned earlier by folks. I won't repeat those. And I had a nice conversation with Representative Pierce this morning. And this is super interesting, by the way, this whole discussion, and learned more in the last 10 minutes than I will the rest of the day. So that was fascinating. But just a quick point. I'm not sure this is happening. I'm just digging into the bill, but I wanted to ask a question, or at least highlight a point on page 15 and lines 36, kind of down there, just the rest. And then page 28. In large part, this is just a section that prohibits a government, the state, or any agency, et cetera. And then on page 28, a unit of government from adopting, enforcing a rule or reg have the effect of prohibiting, restricting, or impairing the ability to use digital assets as a method of payment for legal goods or services. I just want to make sure or put out there that we're not creating an absolute right to say, pay your property taxes to the Benton County Treasurer in crypto. I'm not sure that they're ready to do that yet. I don't know that this does it. Admittedly, I just sort of read it and I got to kind of dig into it, but I'm not sure that everybody is in a position to accept that kind of currency at this point for those types of payments. I kind of think it might not do it because your rule or reg is a legal term. It gets promulgated, as you folks know, and then as well as I'm not sure that your property taxes fit the definition of a legal good or service. But I just saw it and wanted to highlight it for the committee. And I know we're coming back to deal with all that, but it just wasn't touched on earlier when these other issues, and I just wanted to put it on in the record for you folks.
That's a good point. I think we should at least get some clarification, make sure. Representative Pierce.
Thank you, Brian. I think that actually brings up kind of a perfect segue in the broader sense of one, we'll look into that. I agree with you. I don't think it fully overlaps into that, but happy to kind of work over the next month on that question and other questions as well of, hey, the goal is not to get in a situation where you're forcing it down people's throats of like, you have to accept this in a certain way or a certain fashion or whatnot. And so if the language does do that by accident, we're happy to work with you. If it doesn't, we'll maybe work on clarifying that a little bit more.
Yep. Thank you. Thanks.
I think, that county could really make out. There was this story about somebody buying pizza for 10,000 Bitcoins back in the day. And now they're sitting
Benton County might really enjoy that.
Yeah. You never know. Always an opportunity, risk and reward. So you never know.
Thank you, Mr. Burdick.
Thank you.
Do I have anybody else here that would wish to testify? Seeing none, is there some committee discussion here in the room? Do we want to talk a little bit about this? Anything that you want to say to Representative Pierce as we go to work over the next month to see what we can do with this bill? See none. Well, I would just encourage everybody to continue to be in contact with Representative Pierce. Again, I think the intent of doing this early was that we have the time to dig in a little bit and ensure that we've got some clarity on some of these points. But thank everybody for being here today, and we'll stand adjourned.